Okay, so today is the 20th day of Tishrei, the 6th day of Sukkos, and the 22nd of October. Today's the Ushpizin of Yosef HaTzadik. So, what we saw yesterday was very interesting, and I wanted to finish it. I didn't get a chance when we were talking about King Lear, which is one of the few plays, maybe not one of the few, he has a lot, but one of the plays of Shakespeare that I didn't read in school. And so this thing that I thought about it as we were talking, that it's a very good mashal. It's a very good parable for the difference between the three lower worlds and the world of emanation. That the world of emanation is usually described as Hashem's boys, meaning they are considered to be male, masculine.
Boys, you said
Yeah.
that way. Yeah.
Whereas the kingdom, Malchus, is feminine. She's the daughter. And the daughter is sent down. Now, this is a thing that's very common in Jewish folklore. Who made it? The person who made it most famous was Reb Nachman, who has many stories about Avidat Bat Melech. He has the daughter of a king who's, and this is actually all the different fairy tales about a princess who's locked away in some keep, in some tower. Is exactly this idea that the daughter is able to descend into the lower worlds. It's just that there it's romanticized. It becomes like a romantic vision. In Reb Nachman, he tones the romance down, but he leaves the aspect that this is something that moves us. This is something that causes us to want to save her, as it were. And that is, in many ways, that is exactly what Yiddishkeit, what the Kabbalah is selling us. It's selling this vision that you have to redeem the Shechina, the Malchus of Atzilus, from the three lower worlds. Hard to think. But this lends the question, it begs the question, why is the daughter different? Why is she different than the boys? So here we said the boys have natural self-nullification. They can't nullify naturally to the father. They can choose to, but it's already built into them. So, but for her, it's not built in. So, why is that? So, I think one of the answers is because there's a greater distance between the father and the daughter than there is between the father and the sons. Meaning, there's a feeling of, I don't fully understand you. It's not like my boy. I have
sexual difference. You can say.
because of the gender difference. Right.
Yeah.
So, like when I look at my children, my boys, I see myself, and I tend to project myself onto them. I can't do that with my daughter. When my daughter, I understand she's a different world, and it's very hard for a single father, for instance, to bring up a daughter. And much more difficult than it is to bring up boys, obviously, but even more difficult than it is for a single mother to bring up a boy, because there's still some deep natural connection. There's more distance. And I thought, when we finished, that this is very much related to one of the big questions in all of Torah, is why is it that whenever the Torah discusses incest, it never mentions, arayos, as we call them, it never mentions the daughter. What does it say? It says, bat bitcha. It says, the daughter of your daughter. And the sages learn, they say, b'kal v'chomer. Meaning,
If it's for that.
If there's arayos, incestual relation that's forbidden with your granddaughter, the daughter of your daughter, all the more so with your daughter. But why doesn't the Torah even mention it? So I thought that this is part of it, that there's more.
Where it doesn't want to actually state it.
It doesn't state it.
It doesn't want to state it.
Okay, so why? Why doesn't it want to state it? Why doesn't it?
Yeah, even so. Yeah. Okay.
So I thought that maybe this is related to the same question. That the deep reason is because there's a different type of relationship with your daughter. It shouldn't even be a possibility.
I understand.
You don't need to talk about it.
Life, the daughter is closer.
Right.
Later life.
And that's what we're saying here.
In later life,
Yes.
after the daughter and the father are very, very closer than the boy and the father. In later life,
Right.
much more.
Right.
Yes.
Now, but that's connected to, I think, another halacha that's very prominent in Kibud Orim, that a daughter can lisod, how do you say lisod? Can take care, can provide basic necessities, even washing and bathing, for her father, but a son cannot for his mother. Meaning, before we had nice people from the Philippines, who were really very, very, very nice. We have one from my mother. They're mamish angels that come to take care of our parents and help us. And they were just with us over the first Chag, and we were just impressed, blown out of our minds. We had never been with them together.
Where's she living?
She lives by my sister, but she has a caretaker. And so before that, people used to take care of their parents. So the halacha says that a son cannot give these services to his to his mother, but the daughter can give it to her father. There's a different type of relationship in the end, and that's related to what he says here, that in the end, the daughter becomes more subservient, meaning more nullified to the father. That's the whole point of kingdom coming down, of Malchus of Atzilus coming down, and here becoming the true subject. Subject in the sense of that she's really connected. There's a real connection, there's a real affinity of wanting to serve the father, and that's what we have. So again, applying it to ourselves, it's because we are so disconnected that we don't feel our origin in God, that we become so subservient to God. That's exactly apparently the process in the mind. There's this whole thing that you can't really create a relationship when you're close. Again, that was the initial premise. We said this, that you can't be a king over your sons.
Right.
You can only be a king over people who are more distant from you. So the daughter is more distant. This is the Malchus Vatzilus. This is the Shechina. Again, we said this is all the same thing.
Rashab talks about the ben shofet להיות עבד.
Right. Which is becoming actually Malchus. Right? To become so there's a whole topic in Chassidus. Yeah, he'll say it.
No, but it's hard for me to hear it.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No, the ben,
Yes.
there's a son and there's a servant.
Yes.
So in a way, we want also that the ben should become a servant.
Yeah.
The ben should become a servant. That's brought down in Chassidus.
I understand.
There's a whole
Yeah.
the whole section in Tafrei Samach Vav that's what he discusses, and it's considered to be the ideal. And that's what we say, that we ourselves, we are like sons, not in the sense of each one individually, but maybe as a people, we're sons, Banim atem la'Hashem Elokechem, we're Hashem's children. Still, we need to become His servants also. But that's done out of a choice. So here we become feminine in that sense. We become part of the Shekhinah. We become part of the of the divine presence in this one. We become daughter-like, right? Now, why is he talking about all this? We're going to come to it soon, but we were talking about prayer. So how is this related to prayer? All of this, everything he's discussing here, is a way to understand our speech. Again, we said that one of the synonyms, one of the parallel correspondences of this Malchus of Atzilus, of the Shechina, is our speech. So you have to understand that your speech is very detached initially from who you are. Meaning a person can speak, and Freud wanted to learn a lot from what people say initially, like their first reaction, their gut reaction. Maybe that spontaneous type of speech says something about the soul, but normally what people say is not so related to what they feel or what they think. So we have this whole thing that you can't, chad b'peh v'chad b'lev, the speech doesn't necessarily correspond to what a person really thinks.
Thought.
Unlike thought, which you cannot change.
Thought
Is much harder
yes.
to change.
Yes.
We usually say this, that instead of saying thought, here in speech I would bundle all the garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action. All three of them don't necessarily describe the person. What does describe the person, what is what we call not his thought, but his mind. So instead of thought, we'd say the mind. The mind really is you. It's very, very hard to also change your mind, like to understand differently. And the example that's usually brought in Chassidus, I love this example, so I repeat it many times, is I can say that 2 + 2 = 5. I can even think the words, and I can even see the equation, but I can't understand that 2 + 2 = 5. That's the difference between the mind and the garments of the soul. I can certainly do it in some way by writing it down, right? I can express it in that way. But all three of those, thought, speech, and action, They're forms of expression. In the end, they are the three lower worlds. They are the garments of the soul. So he's impressing upon us how important prayer is, because if I now take my speech, which is so detached from my reality, it's really detached from who I am, and I make that subservient to God, meaning I'm now dedicating time at the beginning of the day to speak the words that the sages told me to say in prayer, that is exactly a transformation that's hard to understand. It's exactly the speech being the lower world and becoming subservient to God. As distant as it is, I turn it into a servant of God. And that is the great value, part of the great value of speech, of saying the words, of speaking the prayer. Because I'm doing something here that is reversing the course of the descent of the worlds. The kingdom of emanation comes down to enliven everything. And what do I mean enliven everything? That with my speech, with my expression, my thought, speech, and action, that's how I comport myself in the world. That's how I get things done. That's how I take care of myself. That's how I ensure that I have what to eat. I use these things in order to facilitate my life in the world. And now suddenly I'm taking it and I'm using it as a servant of Hashem. And that's exactly this. Now, he says, if you understand a certain way, let's say there's a person who's very wise. He understands that everything came from God and so on. And a lot of people say this, in my heart I believe. What do they mean, in my heart I believe? They mean, I understand that everything belongs to God. I understand that I have a limited time here. I understand all these things. But from here to come in and waste my time, they'll call it, and say these words again, that's not for me. That I don't need. But what they're missing is that to understand that God created the world, that's easy. To believe in God, that's easy. To believe in providence, that's easy. All these things are easy. What's difficult is spending the hour in the morning and then later in the afternoon and the night and dedicating this time to being a servant. That's much more difficult because there's a great distance. It's not the same thing. Again, the mind, the way I understand, the way I think, that is the world of emanation in a certain sense. That's me. And that's easy to align with God.
It's easier to contemplate than it is to pray.
Much easier. Yeah. And not just to contemplate, but to really believe. Believe. And he says, in my heart I believe, in my heart I have all this. So why do I want to say it? Because it's not for me, this whole thing. What they're really saying is, I find it difficult to act like a servant.
Now I get you. Yeah,
and this goes back to a very famous story in the Talmud, that with Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa and I think it was, who was his Agis Shelo? Who was his Ban Shimon ben Gamliel? Yeah, his brother-in-law. And there was a sick man who came to both of them. And one of them was the Nasi, who was the head of the Sanhedrin. The other one was a very, very poor, simple person. And they both prayed. And it was clear that the other one spent time praying. The head of the Sanhedrin, he spent. It was a great scholar. But he wasn't answered. And Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, all he did was he put his hand down and he prayed for a few seconds, and the guy was healed. So the brother-in-law, the head of the Sanhedrin, comes to his brother-in-law and says, "How is it that I think
his wife asked him.
His wife maybe asked him, yeah. How is it that my brother was able to heal him like that, and you, the head of the Sanhedrin, can't do it?" So he says, because we're like a minister and like a servant before the king. The minister is very honored and respected and has a very important place in the kingdom and so on. But if he wants to come before the king, he has to announce himself 3 months in the appointment, 3 months in ahead, and it's a whole thing, and there's protocol, and there's this, and the whole thing takes time, and it's not so simple that they'll even talk about what he wants to talk about, because it may not be the right time for the king. He doesn't want. The servant's there all day. He comes and goes all the time. All the time. So for him to come in, the moment he comes in, Hashem immediately grants his request. So that's the difference in the world of emanation and when simple people pray. The simple people, they're in the world of kingdom, they're servants. Where kingdom comes down to the three lower worlds, we're servants. And for me just to come in, immediately Hashem answers me because he's a servant, he's not a big scholar. For him to even daven this way, you see big scholars also, they daven a long time, they pray a long time. Because they can't do it like Kabbalah soul. Kabbalah soul. They don't have, it's hard for them. Because they're in a different reality. Okay, so I think that we can finish the chapter maybe today. So in the three lower worlds, there the whole point is to be nullified out of your own will, out of your own understanding, your own consciousness. לקבל עליו עול מלכות שמיים. והוא בחינת ביטול היש. And this we call in Chassidus ביטול היש. And this we call in Chassidus nullifying being. שהיש מבטל את עצמו מדעתו ורצונו שמקבל עליו עול מלכות שמיים כאשר מתבונן שהשם אחד. When the person who feels himself to be a separate being nullifies himself from his own will, from his own consciousness, and he accepts the yoke of heaven when he meditates, when he contemplates that God is one. And everything that happens in the Yichud Ha'elah, the higher unification, which is the unification in the world of emanation, where Hashem is being and I'm not being, I don't exist. Again, it sounds like you're the biggest servant, but no, the servant is someone who has yesh, who has a being, and then nullifies himself. That's the real servant. So in the world of emanation, the higher unification, that happens in and of itself. It's called mimela, by itself. He doesn't have to do anything. So he's not in a position even to nullify himself really. It just happens naturally. Because Hashem is revealed through him. וגם שם הוא מלך כנודע, וגם שם הוא ביטול אמיתי כזיו, מה שאין כן בביטול היש שמכל מקום הוא יש. But there's... This was the most important thing, but there's an exception. That is still a difference. That in the world of emanation, the nullification is higher. It's still higher. Even though it's harder in the three lower worlds, the nullification of the world of emanation is much higher. There it's like the rays of the sun in the sun. And in the three lower worlds, you remain being. Even though you're very nullified, you accept the yoke of heaven, you still feel separate. So, we didn't finish.
The servant puts up the clothes that the king's wear in the morning.
Yeah.
So the servant knows what happens. The Prime Minister doesn't know.
No idea. You can't bring him a packet of Hanes.
Oh.